to serve redevelopment, a major, very ambitious development program in the event. We're talking about housing for about 25,000 people and probably 10,000 employees in this area, along with countless visitors. So a very substantial development program, a new street network, and parks and open space. And I think Waterfront Toronto, building on some of the experiences that Bruce was describing, made a very bold and very brilliant and significant move and said, instead of doing these things the way we normally would do them, or used to do them, which is to hire separate teams to do environmental assessments for each of these pieces, let's bundle all of this together into one international design competition, create an impossible task for a team of people calling on many disciplines to actually deal with all this together as a design problem. That is really quite revolutionary, and that is really what has led to this work. And I responded to this in a team that we formed with Michael Van Valkenburg and associates out of New York and Cambridge. But I want to also point to all the other players on this team. This is as large as a baseball team. And there are all kinds of different disciplines which in a non-hierarchical way require different kinds of intelligence, different kinds of knowledge to deal with the complexity of this problem. So hydrology, ecology, landscape, architecture, urban planning, civil and marine engineering, traffic and transportation, municipal engineering, bridge design, specialists in microclimates. All of these groups, and this is a very international group, came together with the combined mandate of looking at the river and the wetlands, the urban areas, and the park in a comprehensive and cohesive way. And so back in 2007, our team was lucky enough to be the winners of this international competition. This was our first stab. This was a plan that we created at that point in time. And what has happened since is a series of iterations. And an iterative method is the only way to deal with the problem of such enormous complexity. You have to put it all together, kick the tires really hard from every conceivable vantage point, take it apart, reassemble it, and keep doing that over and over again until you get it more or less right. And so that's what I'm going to show you. But the big idea in this plan was to actually take the river and to keep the Keating Channel, which is a really interesting artifact. It's our own little piece of Lachine Canal or Rideau Canal in Ottawa. It's something Toronto has long dreamed of having. It's almost inaccessible to the public now, so you would not know it because you actually can't get there. But it's a wonderful piece of industrial archaeology. To use that as an overflow channel as part of a floodproofing strategy, but to then divert, I keep pushing the wrong button, to divert the river itself into an estuary, a magnificent estuary that would come into the harbor and pick up some of the qualities that would have existed in that earlier natural version of the river coming into the harbor, creating along the way a 100-acre park system of naturalized areas, perched wetlands, and wetlands that are actually online related to the river, and to use this as a setup with a second spillway that would come into the ship channel for a series of neighborhoods, each of these neighborhoods building on the historic fragments, the remnants of the industrial era, and weaving them in as significant places and providing as much diversity of human habitat as we are attempting to do of natural habitat. So from that start, what we've been doing since 2007 is working concurrently with the entire team on all of these environmental assessments in parallel streams, at the same time developing a precinct plan for the first area, the Keating Channel precinct, a framework plan for the larger area, a regulatory strategy for the entire area, a capital program for remediation of soils, for the introduction of the new light rail system, for all of the municipal infrastructure. So all of these things are proceeding currently, and all these layers are interrelated to each other. And what has been extremely challenging, to say the least, is to keep all these balls in the air, not to land on a single thing and say it will lead everything else and it will bend everything else into its will or its form, but to keep all of these malleable, both internally within the team, and this has been a very complex dialogue, but also with all the authorities, all the regulators, all the agencies who have responsibility for all of these things. So we have a very complex set of steering groups that meet on a regular basis, and we've been going through these multiple iterations. At the base of it all is dealing with the river. Rivers are living creatures. They are, by their very nature, dynamic, and understanding the dynamism of the river and dealing with a series of events from the normal condition, what's called the 2-year event, the 5-year event, the 10-year event, the regulatory event, which is the once in a millennium event. This is the Hurricane Hazel, or in fact even more significant, that will come along and inundate the entire area, and allowing this river to live and breathe and expand in its banks, and understanding the dynamism of the hydrology. That has been an extremely important foundation condition for the plan. Founded on that, we have tremendous naturalists on the team, as well as landscape architects, who really have a kind of world understanding of the creation of habitats. You don't design habitats, you don't go out and create them. What you do is to create the conditions in which they can form. So we've been looking very carefully at the kind of habitats that can form along this river in different places related to its dynamic behavior, and how those can both foster a renaturalization from the standpoint of flora and fauna, but also support human use and be integrated with a park system. And the biggest challenge of our day is to overcome these silos that specialists live in. So if you have people who are only interested in fish, or people who are only interested in birds, or people who are only interested in baseball fields, you've got to get them to have a dialogue about how these things can interact in real time in real places, and the perfect in any one of those areas becomes the enemy of the good. If you try to perfect any one of those things, you take over the entire territory and you inhibit other things. So finding that fine balance between things is what it's all about. Periodically, as we have gone on, we created imagery, because just to talk about these things in the abstract is not enough. People need to understand what these places could be. And imagine this extraordinary experience right in the heart of the city. Some of this we already have out in Tommy Thompson Park on the Spit. This would be even closer in. This would be right in the heart of these little neighborhoods. And this would be the reward coming down the Don River Trail when we actually got to the mouth of the harbor. There's an urban component. Urbanism and landscape have equal status here. They are the components that form this. This is a photograph of Portland, Oregon, and it's here because one of the key features, which is one of the great observations of Jane Jacobs in 1961, is the virtue of small urban walks, of frequent pedestrian connections, of a high level of synergy and interaction among urban uses in a mixed setting. So this was one of the things that we carried into the plan. But there were a lot of conditions on the ground that we had to deal with. So here is the river with in broad areas, these white areas, these areas where urbanization could occur. This is the layer of those wonderful artifacts. There are 3 sets of silos, the Victory, Esrop, and Lafarge silos. There are assorted foundry buildings and other wonderful buildings that have layered in here over a variety of periods. And we see these, along with the feeding channel, as